Welcome everybody to the Fanmouth Daily Fantasy Baseball Breakdown for Tuesday, June the 17th. I'm Joe Marsh, joined today by Dave Del Grande. How you doing, Dave?
Wonderfully.
All right, got a big slate of games, got some questions. Fortunately, Dave's here to answer them for us. We're going to go through our lineups. We're going to give you some advice on who we think you should start today. We're going to use Fanmouth prices and Fanmouth scoring, so we'll jump right into it. Now, pitching is a bit interesting tonight because you have heavyweights going tonight. However, they don't have great matchups. You got Darvish against Oakland. He's got a 6.75 ERA against the A's this year. You've got Cueto against the Pirates, who are the hottest hitting team in the league. You've got Tanaka against the Blue Jays, who can score in bunches. And then you got Scherzer against KC, who's suddenly hitting the ball well. So I chose to skip all those guys and go with Waka today. Waka's been great at home this year. Um, he's made 11 of his 14 starts have been quality starts, 8.11 strikeouts per 9 innings, 4-0 at home with a 2.42 ERA there. And then he's facing the Mets, who are hitting 2.24 against righties. They're hitting 2.16 in June, sixth in the league in strikeouts. So that's a pretty weak offense. I really like the matchup of Waka today. Like I said, I think, of those top tier guys, I'm sure they'll pitch well, but will they really pitch worth their high price tags tonight? I think Waka's a better way to go. And then I think you compare him with Dallas Keuchel. He's allowed 8 earned runs over his last 7 starts combined. He's got 2 complete games over that span. This guy eats up a ton of innings. 1.42 ERA on the road with a 1.95 batting average against, and he's pitching in Washington, which is a pitcher's park, and facing the Nationals, whose offense has suddenly gone cold. They're hitting 231 in June. So I really like the pairing of Waka and Keuchel. Doesn't cost you a ton. Will leave you some money for offense if you can find a few values. I think that's a great way to go today. What are you thinking?
I agree with much you said about the heavyweights there. I think that's going to be the key to your lineup tonight is deciding, because like you said, a couple of these guys are going to pitch good games despite their matchups. The key is figuring out which ones are going to do it. I would give Tanaka the edge over the ones that you threw out initially because Toronto is on the road. Toronto's a decent hitting team, but they're slumping now. They're on the road. The Yankees have kind of caught fire. They're facing Stroman tonight, who's not an elite pitcher. I think they have way the best of the pitching matchup here. And Tanaka has been as good as anybody all season long in terms of striking guys out, which is key in the fantasy game. So I would rate Waka as my number 1 pitcher, but I would rate Tanaka a solid number 2 there among the heavyweights. Now, looking at the middleweight ranks, Keuchel has been very good, but I give Washington a ton more credit than you do. They are clearly the better team in this matchup. They're starting to play better. They've moved into first place. They hit left-handers well, and they've got Rourke pitching tonight. Rourke is a very good pitcher who's a hot pitcher. I'd actually consider taking Rourke in this matchup in a game I think Washington is going to win. There is a second mid-level pitcher going tonight that I like, and that's Samardzija. Samardzija is a very good pitcher. I don't usually, play the Cubs a lot, but Miami is kind of sinking down to the where they belong. They're not playing real well all of a sudden. They're pitching their worst pitcher, actually a backup pitcher going for them tonight. So the Cubs actually have a chance to win this game. Samardzija's been pitching well. He strikes out guys. Nobody has struck out more than the Marlins of late. I think it's a good matchup for a middleweight to score some points. Now, you know me. I'm scouring the bottom of the barrel for my pitchers, and there really isn't a lot to like there, I'm sad to report today. The only guy I would consider from way down at the bottom is Tomlin of Cleveland, but he's going up against the Angels. The Angels are pitching a poor pitcher. And Tomlin, for that price, well, he'll get you value. He'll get you his 8,000, or which means he just needs 8 points. He'll get you those 8 points. So if you want to play it safe, you want to stack your lineup, there's a safe play to make from the lower ranks. The point is, you got heavyweights, you got middleweights, you maybe even have one lightweight option. you got a lot of different ways to go with your pitching today.
Yeah, I like those calls actually. Samardzija, I think, is a very solid play. I just have him, behind a few others. And I do agree with you. Tanaka is the best of the top plays. He's the safest guy. He hasn't really had a bad outing this year, whereas some of the other guys have. And especially Darvish against the A's is something I would tend to stay away from. Moving back behind the plate, couple good options here. Devin Mesoraco, I think, is a great play here, hitting 350 on the road, 375 against lefties, and facing Compton, who's been terrible, 6.06 ERA, 313 batting average against. I think he's a standout. And then, of course, my boy Jimenez, whenever Darvish is on the mound, means Jimenez is going to be behind the plate, and he's very cheap. Still hitting 378 on the year. So I think if you need to save money, look for Jimenez. He's typically hitting around 6th in that lineup. And they have a pretty decent matchup against the lefty Malone. So I think he's a very solid play tonight. Who do you like?
Well, I think there's a lot of good hitting options tonight, and it's going to be very difficult to sort among. I had Mesoraco on my list, but I like some guys better than him. Gaddis has been red hot. The Braves tonight are facing Kendrick, who, other than Compton, arguably is the worst pitcher going. Gaddis is the hottest hitting catcher, as far as I'm concerned, of late. I think he's worth considering. Lucroy tonight is at Arizona against a lefty who gives up a lot of power to right-handed hitters. That's not a good thing when you're facing the Brewers. You got to consider some of the big bats on the Brewers tonight. And then you got Buster Posey, who goes into an American League park where he doesn't have to worry about catching. He can relax and just hit against a left-hander who gives up some power to right-handed hitters. I think you're going to want to look at some Giants power hitters in this game as well. So I think there's a lot of good options here. I would say my number one pick, just because he's the hottest of the catchers right now, would be Gaddis.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, and I'm with you on the Brewers. We'll definitely get into that. That's a team we're going to use a lot. Just not sure if I can, I can't use them at every position, so I would look elsewhere at catcher, try to get them in, especially in the outfield. Moving over to first base, man, there's a ton to like at first base. Why don't you kick us off here?
Well, I have quantity rather than quality. I'm sorry, the other way around. I have quality rather than quantity. There's really only two first basemen that I would consider tonight, because they both they go to the number 1 and 2 matchups that I've talked about already. You want Reds left-handers going tonight against Compton. You got Joey Votto. We want Braves left-handers going tonight against Kendrick. You got Freeman. I don't think you need to look any farther than that. I like Victor Martinez. I liked him last night. He had a decent game. I like him again tonight. He doesn't even qualify at first base on Fanmouth, but he's worth discussing at this position just to get his name out there. But for the true first baseman, to me, it's Votto or Freeman, and to me, it's a toss-up between the two. I would go with the cheaper of the two at this point, which is Votto.
Yeah, I'm with you on Votto. He's got 8 hits since returning from the DL in 6 games, hitting 283 against righties. You talked about it. Compton is a guy to attack with lefties. He's given up a 353 average to lefties. But then you've also got Teixeira, who absolutely crushes righties, 6 home runs and 59 at-bats, hit 9 home runs at home. And he's facing Stroman, who's given up a 377 batting average to lefties, so he's a great play. And then you got to look at Brandon Moss, given his success against Darvish, 4 home runs and 20 at-bats against Darvish. I like him as a play as well. So I think there's a lot to like at first base. I also found a lot to like in the outfield, so I think that utility spot is going to be very valuable today. Second base, what do you think?
Well, I've got a nice price play here at second base. To me, it's the one obvious play of the day as far as I'm concerned, and that's Lestrella of the Braves. He's come on recently. He's not a big powerful hitting second baseman, but he's been consistent. I would call him, he's the hottest hitter of all the second basemen going. He's also still a very, very cheap option, and he fits into one of my must attack categories. He's a lefty hitter against Kendrick tonight. I think he's a very solid play, a nice bargain at second base.
Yeah, I think that's a solid play. I think Ricky Weeks is also a solid play, again, with that Brewer stack. We We talked about Miley. 5.69 ERA at home. That's a really good hitter's park. That's a guy to attack. Of course, D. Gordon is somebody I'm always going to consider when there's a righty on the mound. Below average catcher behind the plate. He's been hot. He homered a couple games ago. He was 4 for 4 yesterday. He's been swinging a pretty good bat lately as well.
Yeah, I should have mentioned Weeks, in fact, because I like him as well. I was surprised his price was as high as it was.
Yeah,
I thought, wow, he's like, he's going to be a good bargain. Then I looked at his price, and he's not the bargain, but he figures to have a nice game tonight.
Yeah, he's crept up towards the middle of the pricing pack. The problem is, like you said, there's a limit on how many players you can have. Is it 4 from one
Yes.
team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm like, there's at least 2 outfielders you got to get. I think Aramis Ramirez jumping right into third base is the next best play, and then it's like after that, you mentioned Lucroy, Weeks. Where do you want to use that last guy at? I mean, if your lineup shakes out like that. But yeah, getting into Aramis Ramirez, he's been hot, hitting 333 in June, 313 with 3 home runs and 32 at bats against lefties. I think he's a great play tonight. Brock Holt, still a good choice. His price has crept up a little, but hitting 358 at home and 369 in June. Those are great numbers as well. But I think Ramirez is the true standout at third base. How about you?
I agree. I think he's the top play at third base. My second choice would be Chisenhall. I'm surprised you didn't mention him. You were hot on him last week. Maybe he's cooled off a bit, but he gets Schumacher tonight, a very weak righty. Who gives up good average, good power to lefties. So he'd be a nice second option there at third base. But if you can get Ramirez in there, I think that's the way to go. I agree.
I did consider Chisenhall, but I like Holt as well. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with either of those guys if you're looking to save a bit of money there. I don't see a bad play there. How about shortstop? Shortstop looks a little weak to me today. What do you think?
I think I agree. I think it's a position where you need to save money today. So there's really no reason to consider, in my mind, the real heavyweights, Tulowitzki and Ramirez and that like. I would my favorite here at this position is going to be Andrus. Andrus against the lefty. Malone's pitching for the A's. Malone's a decent pitcher, but he's a slightly above average left-hander. I expect Texas to score some runs in this game. The A's bullpen all of a sudden has gone from a real strength to a real weakness, and so look at that Texas game last night. They pounded the starter last night, who also was a lefty, but then they added on 6-8 more runs against the bullpen as well. So this could be a game where maybe even if Malone pitches 5 or 6 effective innings, Texas could end up scoring 6-7 runs. So. Castro of the Cubs, I think, is a good option tonight against. Talked about DeSclafani or Sclafani of the Marlins. Basically a substitute pitcher. But Andrus is probably gonna be my choice at shortstop.
Okay, yeah, I like Danny Santana. Still good. Still prices down. Hitting 400 against lefties. He has 7 multi-hit games in the month of June. Yeah, he's facing Leicester, but he's been facing some tough pitchers and actually hitting well. And he's in a good spot in that order. So that's a guy I like a lot. And then jumping over to outfield, this is where I want to get a couple more Brewers. I think Gomez is a real standout to me. I believe that's my home run pick of the day. 4 home runs in 49 at bats against lefties. He's hitting 353 on the road, and that's a very good hitter's park. So I like the guys who are hitting well on the road going there. Same goes for Chris Davis, hitting 368 against lefties, 5 home runs and 57 at bats against lefties. Braun's hitting a bit better lately. I would probably edge him out. I don't like him enough to spend that money on him. I think he's a decent play. Adam Jones is a standout, 414 against lefties. And he's been on fire. 6 home runs in the month of June, hitting 356. That's a great guy right there. And then Scott Van Slyke is somebody who's, if you need a cheap outfield, I'm not anticipating I will because I found a few cheap infielders, but he's got good power against lefties. Hit 2 home runs off a lefty the other day. That brings his total to 6 home runs and 48 at-bats. That's a number I really like. That's 1 every 8 at-bats against left-handers. Those are great power numbers for him tonight. What do you think in the outfield?
Well, I agree with what you said about there being a lot of options out there. Certainly you want to consider the Brewers. I'd be wary of Gomez tonight. I mean, Gomez was out last night with an injury. He's got a hamstring problem. I don't, and with so many other good options, you need to be 100% for me to get into my outfield tonight. I'd rather have Davis going at a much cheaper price. And like you said, Braun is always a good choice, but he just hasn't. He's not hot right now. So,
Yeah.
and I would say among the Brewers, I would say Davis is my top choice in the outfield, because when the Orioles are facing a lefty, you almost have to play either Jones or Cruz or both
Right.
of them. And they're facing a lefty tonight, not a good one at that. I agree with you that Jones, to me, it seems to be the hotter player over Cruz. If I had to choose between the two, I would go with him. There's also, I mentioned before the Reds lefties against Compton, the Braves lefties against Kendrick. There are four of them. Three good ones among the outfielders. Jay Bruce of the Reds, Hayward of the Braves. I mean, two very good choices. And then you got Hamilton of the Reds, who's been a hot hitter lately. He steals bases, is kind of cheap. There to me is a nice cheap option. And dipping way down the list for a really cheap guy who had a bad game last night, but has come on, has actually hit for a team that doesn't really hit well at all, is Kiermaier of Tampa Bay. Has hit very well. And Tampa's up against Gonzalez of Baltimore tonight, not a good pitcher. So again, if you're I hate to save money at the outfield position where there's so many high-priced guys, but that's also the position where there's all lower-priced guys who are good bargains. So if you find that you need, that last outfield spot to be a real bargain, then I would look at Hamilton, or even lower down the list, I'd look at Kiermaier.
Yeah, just to defend my Gomez pick, I didn't look at that injury as, anything serious, just more of a precautionary. He says he probably could have played, just a bit of hamstring tightness. It wasn't a strain or anything like that. I still feel good about his numbers, both, against lefties and on the road. I think if he's in the lineup, he's a solid play. I believe, again, like I said, I think he's my home run pick. That wraps us up for the day. We'll go through and give you a final word on lineup building. For me, it's Waka and Keuchel. You're not spending too much money. You save plenty of money for offense where you only need to save at a few positions and you can afford all the guys you want. Again, if you want to go for an elite guy, I think Tanaka's the guy, and I do like Dave's call of Samardzija as well. Behind the plate, I think Jimenez is probably the best place to save money, so you have it to spend elsewhere. First base, ton of options. Teixeira, Votto, Freeman, Goldschmidt, Moss all need to be in consideration, and probably one of them in your utility spot as well. That utility spot's going to come into play, be very important tonight. Again, get some right-handed Brewers in your lineup. And that about sums it up for me. Dave, final word.
Yeah, good stuff. I agree with a lot of it. Waka to me is among the heavyweight pitchers is the guy who I would go to first before Tanaka. I do like Samardzija among the middleweight starting pitchers. And the lineup to me, you got to look at the Reds lefties. Guys like Votto and Bruce and Hamilton, the Braves lefties, Freeman and Hayward for sure, and Lestrella to me at second base, a bargain second baseman who's been hitting well. He's someone on a night where you could spend a whole lot of money on your hitters. Lestrella is going to be a guy where you get a hot hitter at a very low price. So I would look at those matchups to attack. And I agree with you with the Brewers. You're definitely going to want one or two Brewers righties in the lineup. Chris Davis to me I really like. Ramirez I really like as well. So a lot of good hitting options, a lot of good pitching options, and tonight is really going to be a case of needing to to budget properly. Figure out where you're what positions you feel strongest about, and also this might be a night where you'd be well advised to figure out who your three best bargain plays are of the night and put them in your lineup first, because then all of a sudden you'll look and say, well, I got a lot of money to spend on these last 7 or 8 positions. Now you can go out there and get the guys you really want. So guys like Lestrella, who I mentioned, maybe a Kiermaier, somebody like that, or even if you want to do it with a pitcher, throw a Tomlin in there. And that's going to open up a lot more options for you throughout the rest of the lineup. That would be a strategy that I would invoke tonight. Pick 3 cheap options, throw them in your lineup, solidify those positions, and then go for the big, the big heavyweights at the other spots. I think you'll be happy with the results.
I agree with that. For me, it would be Jimenez and Santana, but same line of thinking. Get those guys in there. Especially, I like the mid-price pitchers. Seems like you like, some somewhat mid-price pitchers. You only need to save at a couple spots, and then you can get, the outfielders and the big corner infielders that you like. That wraps us up for today. Dave and I will be back tomorrow. In the meantime, you can check our rankings at blog.fanmouth.com or follow us on Twitter at PlayFanmouth. Thank you very much.